welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast, a weekly show about the entrepreneurial journey and making it big in any industry. We're your hosts, Joe White and Kane Daniel.
And welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast. Today we're joined by Asif Kasim, the president and CEO of Integrity Tree Financial. Asif has been the president and CEO of Integrity Tree Financial since 2014. With over 2 decades of experience in the mortgage industry, Asif has earned multiple mortgage industry awards and recently became a franchise partner at Unicity International. He's also the founder of Play for Hope, an organization that raises funds for youth-related causes through events like an annual golf tournament. So definitely want to hear more about that. Asif brings a wealth of knowledge and heart to the table. So welcome, Asif.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's great to have you with us. Hey, I'd like to get started with asking you how did you find your way to the mortgage brokering industry? I know not everybody wakes up as a 10-year-old thinking, this is the industry I want to get into. So what was your path that led you here?
I fell into the industry by accident. I was a banker, well, not even a banker. I was an analyst at the bank, at TD Bank. And I worked there for many years, and it got to the point where they're about to give me a pay grade increase, moving up a band level. Here's some more money. And then I went to my boss at the time, who he really was with the catalyst that got me into this. He says, you're going to be doing the same thing with more money. You're going to get bored. And I was like, yes, I will get bored. What else do you have for me? So I've got nothing. He said, have you ever considered doing mortgages? I was probably like 25, 26 at the time. I'm like, yeah, what do mortgages do? Right? Didn't really know anything about it. And he arranged a meeting with one of the sales managers at TD to get a feel for the job, sort of thing. But I said, well, why? I'm an analyst. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, you're a salesperson through and through. He says, I've been here for like 7 years, and I know you know more people, and you've only been here for 3 years. More people above our floor, below our floor, on our floor. You can't shut up. Everything you do part-time is sales related, because I always had a retail job and I loved sales, but I just never thought of myself as that person. Long story short, I ended up in front of the sales manager, who said, Asif, by far, you out of the three-legged stool of knowing credit, having a network, and being a salesperson, you've got one of those legs. You're a salesperson. I was young. I didn't have a network, and I knew nothing about credit. One thing led to another. I ended up taking an underwriting job, learned how to underwrite, built my credentials, and jumped into the sales force at TD, probably 2005. Fell flat on my face, got up, and started figuring out how to do it.
When you say fell flat on your face, what was the big challenge that you were finding at that time?
I know this now as a seasoned veteran, but until you actually have a live deal in your hand, no amount of theory is really going to help you be successful out there on the street. Like, people could tell you product and policy all day long, but when you have a deal in your hand, it's a different beast, right? It's just like deer in the headlights. And at that stage, I was young, wet behind the ears. Nobody took me serious to begin with because, baby-faced and all that stuff. It was hard to develop a trust in clients at 26, 27 years old to build that relationship. So, it took a while of stumbling and asking a gazillion questions, sometimes the same questions 10 times because you don't retain this stuff, for me to figure it out. And I think I did maybe 1 or 2 deals in my first year as a bank rep. But then the next year, we went up gradually. And every year I kept increasing till I got to some significant numbers.
And for those that can't see Asif, you still look like you could be maybe late 20s to me. So, but Asif, so from the bank, let's just skip ahead a tiny bit. I'm just curious. So from the bank, then you came into the broker side. Tell me about that. Maybe what inspired that move, and sort of how it worked out for you. What was the transition like?
There was actually a step in between. I went from being a sales rep at the bank to shifting to sales management at another bank. And I learned a lot of my managerial knowledge and then understanding of people from a different standpoint there. But then, to be honest, I don't do well with authority, and I don't do well with following instructions well, which probably explains my kids. I got to that stage where my clients from the past started contacting me again, and the writing was on the wall where I was at that maybe it's time to make that move. So I jumped into brokering as an agent in 2014, and as soon as I jumped in, within about 30 days, I started getting calls from the guys saying, "Hey, boss, we heard you laugh. Can we join you?" Right? So I mean, that felt great, but I was still learning this side of the equation because I knew banking. I knew banking policies. I knew banking guidelines. I didn't know monoline or what a monoline did. I didn't know B lending. I didn't know you could charge a fee. All that was foreign to me, right? I was still sending my business to the two banks because that's what I knew, right? So there was that transition of understanding policy and guidelines. So I had sales down, I had a network down, but now you got to learn credit from a different perspective. So that was my transition over. It took a bit of time, but I got there.
And what did you find at that time? So once you made that decision, okay, so the authority part, you wanted some more independence, some more freedom in your business. You moved over then to the broker side, became an agent. What was then the challenge? Like, what were you like? What was that like? What did it feel like? How was it with the first day? And especially, like, I'm trying to think about now those listeners that are maybe in the same spot that you were at, that are bank reps right now, that maybe are doing mobile mortgage reps, for example, at the bank, that are thinking about coming in. What are they going to find? What did you find was the biggest challenge? And then how did you overcome that? Like, what steps or what advice might you have for those people?
The biggest challenge, I would say, for me, and I find this with a lot of bankers who left, was confidence in your own self as a salesperson, not the logo over your head. Because a lot of people walk out of the bank and they don't necessarily have the same degree of confidence because they feel they lose a piece of themselves when they let go of the blue or the green or the red or whatever it may be. And now they're independent, in theory, under one of the national brands, but they don't feel it's as strong. They don't recognize how strong the broker space is and how recognized it is out there. Now, at that time, slightly different world. Today, it's significantly more stronger than it used to be. The confidence was a big deal of, hey, I'm with such and such a brand. And they're like, well, who's that? Most of my business was derived through relations and people who knew me. It wasn't brand new people who came to me and said, oh, we saw your logo. It was so-and-so referred me. So building relations and making sure you had strong, airtight, deep-rooted relationships was much more important, because at the bank, you got away with, I got a logo on my head, you'll come to me anyway, right? There was a lot of people that over the years I've recruited from banks and then kind of sent them back because they were more of a cog in the machine as opposed to being an independent salesperson with their own personal brand. They just, because they happened to work at a branch and that branch fed them everything and they knew policy inside out, that's why they were successful. But tell them to go in the driveway, or not driveway, the parking lot, and find 10 people. That wasn't happening.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Given your experience and what you've gone through with Integrity Tree Financial, tell us a bit about what makes you unique there, and just how this came to be.
Yeah. Interesting how it started. I mean, mortgages was all I ever really thought I was going to do when I got into the space. And integrity, the word integrity itself branched from some courses I used to take before landmark education. And integrity was one of their key courses. And it always resonated with me. So I wanted that to be part of my branding when I got into the space. So even though I worked for a brokerage at the time, FISPO was a little looser. So I got away with running a team, branding it as I wanted to, right? Very quickly did I realize a lot of my client base were self-employed, even when I was at the bank, but then guidelines changed with the government. So they started getting pushed to the alternative space. So a lot of my clients always asked me, who's your accountant? We need an accountant. Can you get me an accountant? So I called somebody up I knew, and I said, listen, what's your career aspirations? I know you're doing accounting. What do you want to do? And he said he wanted to eventually open his own accounting shop. I said, well, listen, I'll set one up. You partner with me. I will funnel all of my self-employed clients to you, because what else am I going to do with them? Right? So anybody who needs accounting services, set up an operation, whatever it may be on the business side, go for it. They're yours. Right? And in return, if somebody needs a mortgage or something else, flip them over to us. So that was really where we started delving out into a branch, right? So mortgages and accounting. My father became ill later on, around 2016, 17, in that time frame. And he was diagnosed with cancer. And what I realized quickly at that time was how much most people just don't know about basic things in life. Power of attorney, a will, insurance coverages, all of the stuff that comes with, all right, we're on the other side of health, right? Things aren't going well. And what do? Right? Because we had to scramble to get these things done. But it really opened my eyes for, our families prepared for their significant others and their loved ones? Do they have insurances? Do they have things in place? Because a lot of my clients are getting older now. They're graduating from, we just bought our first condo and house, to settling down, having kids, and so on and so forth, and retirement planning. So that triggered my, let's go get my insurance license. Because for now, I just hand them to people, right?
Right.
So as things progressed, got my license, and now I'm handling both the mortgage insurance side. But as you can imagine, you can't juggle that many balls in the air at one time. You can't run the operation. You can't sell. You can't service. You can't do this, that, when there's only one of you. So fast forward a few years, that's where I partnered with Patrick. So Pat came in and I said, Pat, here's the mortgage brokerage. That's your baby. You run that show. I'm going to focus on insurance investments. I'll still do mortgages, but I have a back end. I have people behind me to help out. But I realize that you have to have people to do things. You can't do it all on your own, because you will drop the ball inevitably. And that's how the tree sprouted. That's how we went from Integrity Mortgages to Integrity Tree Financial, because now we have multiple arms with the opportunity to have others in the future if we need it.
And Asif, and you're talking about Patrick Soy, who we've had recently on the podcast as well. So I wanted to ask you about this, and I'm glad you touched on it. For those, coming into the industry that plan on being entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, that want to be a mortgage agent, that want to be life insurance, or really any industry where they're kind of independent, that transition to becoming a owner or a team leader, like, what was that like for you? And is it something that you always wanted to do even early on? Or is it something that you fell into? Wondering what the path looked like ahead of time, and then maybe looking back, sort of how that was challenging, or was it challenging, or was it different for you?
You know what? Leadership was always something that I was doing. And I just naturally gravitated towards it, because even at the bank, when my manager hired somebody new, they said, go see Asif, and I would train them and develop them on the systems and how to underwrite for TD at the time, and so on and so forth. I just did it naturally. When I got into the broker space, when people started joining me, I didn't think to myself, hey, let's just go open a brokerage right away. It was, all right, I got a few people under me. I can manage handling their deals and help them with building the business and so on and so forth. But then when I get to about 17, 18 people, I was like, okay, this is a bit much. Maybe I should leave the brokerage and start my own. I will say this for anybody thinking about this. There's a trade-off. There is always going to be a trade-off. When you're managing individuals and helping them become successful, your individual sales will take a hit. Determine what's more important to you. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy training. I've always enjoyed that side of the equation. I love sales too. I'm a salesperson. But you kind of have to choose one or the other. It's hard to do both and be really great at both, right? So inevitably, my personal sales dropped down, but then it was offset by volumes and me developing and growing another team, right? Or growing a team at that time. Anybody who's interested in doing that, they have to know well before doing it what's more important to them. Is it the income and the autonomy, or is it the personal pleasure and joy of developing and growing others? I love when others Don't get me wrong, I don't want to see them leave. But if they do leave and spread their wings and do other things, there's a degree of pride of, I helped them get there, right? I love watching them grow and develop. I enjoy that side of the equation. If it was all financial, and I joke about this with other principals, if it was all financial, we would fire everybody, hire 2 assistants, and just go sell.
Yeah, we do talk about that quite a bit in this industry, how really supportive it's become, especially over the last decade or so, or maybe a little bit more. That there's wonderful communities out there, a lot of people like yourself really giving back and giving their time and energy and spirit into supporting others, especially those coming in new and finding their success. So it's, I think, something not well understood from those coming outside the industry. There is quite a good support system in the industry. A lot of people willing to have conversations, to share their ideas. And so it really is wonderful that way. I'm wondering, you talked about hiring. I know you hire agents. For those that you're hiring, what do you look for? Like if you're going to say, this is sort of maybe one version of my ideal candidate, are there attributes that you look for? Are there personalities that you look for? Like, what are you seeking?
I think everybody has a baseline of, okay, are they personable? Can we chat? Do we have a good, rapport and relationship and chemistry? Oh, it's important. There are certain things that are very important to me. I learned early in my career. I need to know motivations. What's getting you out of bed? Why did you choose mortgages? As Joe said, we don't wake up and dream we want to become a mortgage broker. Why do you want to do mortgages? Why not any other sales type of career? Real estate makes way more money, right? From a transactional standpoint, why mortgages? What is the additional income going to do for you that your current income couldn't do for you, right? And does that mean when you hit that plateau, you're going to put your feet up, right? Like somebody doing $75,000, $80,000, say, and the answer is always how much you want to make, 100K. Okay, so now that you've made 20 to 25, 30K more, are you going to put your feet up? What do you want to do? Like, what's it going to do for you in life? I need to know what buttons to push when I see your numbers are down. I need to know what your thought process is and what's going to get you out of bed. That's one. Motivations are huge for me. And often, if somebody comes to me and they tell me that there's, a fire underneath them, and I can see the fire in our conversation as to why they need to make this work, that pretty much there is no safety net. Those are the ones that I think work out well. The ones who have a safety net, whether it's family or spouse or whatever it may be, they got sold on the idea that mortgages is sexy and it makes a lot of money easily, when mortgages were falling out of the sky, right? Well, in today's world, you got to know what you're doing, and you got to put both feet on the ground and run out there and start meeting and greeting and developing a relationship. So you got to put in the work. But for a long period of time, the industry's kind of been overly glamorized and I would say sold as no problem, you can sell. It's easy, you can get a mortgage done, right? It's not that easy, and people are finding out hard. A lot of people aren't renewing. A lot of people aren't, when I say renewing their license as mortgage agents, a lot of people aren't succeeding. They're falling and they're stumbling and they're not sure why. So I would say make sure I know their motivations, make sure they're coachable, and make sure they're organized. One thing that I impress upon everybody is you better have your weeks planned out ahead of time. Because if I can meet with you and say, open your calendar, and you've got nothing in it, then you've done nothing. I don't care what you tell me you've done nothing. Plan ahead.
And I think that what you said is so important for those listeners that are looking at this industry, thinking that maybe it takes, a certain set of soft skills or a certain understanding of finance when looking to come into the industry. And, what we're hearing more and more, and I think what you're saying here is that it's not necessarily the case. Really what you're looking for is a set of core characteristics or attributes that someone has. Being coachable, I think you mentioned that's super important. I agree. But that really means that this opportunity could potentially be for everyone. But I'm also interested to hear if you think there are things that you look for as like maybe red flags or like reasons why someone shouldn't be in the industry, aside from just the obvious opposites of what you did mention. Is there anyone that's not maybe well suited for this type of industry?
I would say you have to be a people person. At the end of the day, if you're not a people person, even if I would say go to your family and your friends and ask them, Am I a people person? Do you see me selling? Because your friends and family will be bold and very painfully
Especially
honest.
your close friends, especially.
They'll tell you,
Yeah.
oh, you have no business selling. If they think they can see you doing it, they're going to be honest with you, right? They'll tell you the truth. So I've had people who sold themselves on the idea that they could sell. And in an interview, you only have one or two interviews. It's they can sell me on the idea, and then they come in and they're panicked. They're not sure how to go out and meet people. So you got to have a sales personality. I think product and policy is interchangeable because you could take me out of here, and I know this because I can do insurance. And if I went and learned another product line, I can go sell that because I have the personality for it, right? You have to like numbers, but you don't have to love numbers because we teach in the course to do the mathematical equations and all that stuff. But let's be realistic. Once you're in the industry itself, you have a laptop and you have an entire support team, right? Typically, there's underwriting support. There's someone who's going to help you along. Now, do you have to know it? You should. That's a difference maker. But do you need to know it inside out? Probably not, right? Because I could plug and play most of my stuff and get the GDS and TDS and all that. You got to love numbers to do this job because that's all you're focusing on numbers. Unless you get to a certain point, like, the higher ups who've been doing this forever, who, hi, what's your name? Okay, what do you need? Great. All right, meet so-and-so, and they're going to crunch all the numbers for you. Slightly different setup. But they also have a system in place for that. Even to where I'm at now, I bring somebody in, I run the numbers, but then I'm inevitably going to say, meet my associate. They're going to help you get this to the finish line and get you funded, right? I don't delve into excessive amount of numbers once I get beyond the initial ratios and stuff.
I think, yeah, and that's especially important with now we see, this emergence of technology and different tools that mortgage brokers and agents will use. And so if your value as a broker is, for example, numbers, you're really good at suitability or you're really good at crunching numbers, that's something that's more easily replaced with technology than relationships, right? What do you think is going to happen? Like, what do you see happening with agents? What do you see happening with the industry now in the next several years with this? Right now, we're in 2024. We're just seeing the very beginnings of, I think, a major shift in technology. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen to the industry?
I think it's going to become a little bit more automated. Competition is going to get tighter because we're not there yet, but you're inevitably, as the years progress, we're going to get to a little bit more of a point and click, and things will automatically happen and get approved. But that's for your AAA non-complex transaction, right? As a broker, they need me there for advice. They need me there for service. And people still love the human element. Yeah, there is a generation that's getting a little bit more technical and just let me get it done, point and click. But a lot of those people, they still can't get qualified through that system because they're self-employed, right? Or there's only so much information that they'll understand. They're not financially literate. We don't teach this in school, right? That to me is just a major red flag that they don't teach anybody who thinks they could just point and click and get an approval, it doesn't work out well. We're always going to be important. And anybody in any company that says that they're going to shift more technology and spend more time on technology, good luck to them. I just don't think it's going to happen where they replace us. Now, 20 years from now, I'll be retired, but in 20 years from now,
just in time,
the world could be different, right? But not for the next 10 years. Yeah, you got to be a little smarter. You got to be a little sharper. Invest your time into relationships. Relationships is where the business is at. The more relationships you have, the more people you meet, the more you network, the more you have top of mind awareness with them, the more business will be had.
So where do you think technology fits into this, into the entire picture of brokering as we go forward?
Speed, for sure. To get things done, there's going to be an element of faster approvals, moving documents around, getting things done faster to eliminate risk and for risk management purposes, so we can avoid fraud and get away from stuff. So I love the open banking. I love open banking stuff because now here's the document. It's verified, invasion of privacy, but at least we know your documents are real and aren't forged. Because And this was many years ago. I sat in a Starbucks and I watched a guy answer phone calls with multiple papers and multiple cell phones, right? I've seen
Yeah.
I've seen documents forged. I've seen a lot of stuff. So if that's happening and that was then, I can't imagine how much forward it has moved. So I think fraud's a big deal. We need to hammer that out. And I'm all for raising the bar on qualifying, cost. I think the entry point is cheap, right? We're dealing with minimum $500,000 transactions for people, yet we can get the course and get our licensing and everything for a minimal amount. We need to raise the bar on passing levels, right? This is one of the challenges I've had over the years. But we're not going anywhere. Even though technology is going to help us move faster and mitigate risk, we're not going anywhere. But technology is definitely going to make our world, I would say, easier, and it might clean up the industry a little bit.
Asif, that's an interesting point you made about those coming in the industry, and we hadn't thought about this before, or I haven't, is how that fits in with the role of technology. So that when you have these things coming, and I think it's inevitable, as you mentioned, there's going to be smart contracts, there's going to be automation. I mean, it's going to change what lawyers do probably with real estate transactions and everything else eventually, so that this is almost ironclad. If everything's, for example, on the, if everything is locked into the blockchain, for example, then it's very simple. That will ultimately change the role of the mortgage agent. What does that do for the barrier to entry coming in, right? If you're not having to necessarily focus as much on the underwriting or suitability, what is the role of the mortgage agent? And then what should the requirements be for those people in terms of education otherwise? And I don't know if there's an answer there. I just thought of that right now as you were talking about it.
More education, but not necessarily from a ratio technical standpoint. Education of understanding clients in their life cycle and where they're at and what's applicable and what's not applicable. And that's more, we develop this as skills over time as to when I meet a client, where they at, where they want to be, and what's relevant at that moment and what's important to where we want to get. That's something you develop. But it can be taught to some degree in courses. How this could inevitably impact us, I can see compensation lowering. If the lenders are starting to automate things and move faster, and things are moving a little bit quicker through them, and there's less manual involvement, then they may turn to us at some point and say, well, why do we need you? Or we could do less of this. I know Scotia at some point tried to bring on their online direct to consumer business, and it didn't do well, right? It didn't. But I think it's only a matter of time before that catches on. When I broke into just banking in general, I was selling Bank of Montreal's MBanks, which was online banking. And this was in the late 90s. I was a decade early before, right? Inevitably, it caught on. It was just timing of when it was going to catch on. There's going to be a point in time where the industry says, hey, we need brokers, but we need them more for the alternative space or the not AAA space, right? The AAA client can walk in and say, here's my portfolio, here's my open banking, here's all the details you need, here's all my documents. And they may be able to decipher that faster without having to get me involved. And then they might say, well, Asif, instead of giving you X amount, we're going to give you a bit less. Why? We don't need you as much. The alternative space or that niche lender, they'll need us because a client isn't going to be able to decipher what's important and what's not, and what they have and what they don't have. Again, not everyday knowledge.
I think it also depends, even for those AAA people, what their appetite for human connection is going to be in the future, right? Because it might, even for those people, maybe they still want to talk to a human. I mean, it's a crazy large transaction that's happening. It's we're not order takers as brokers. Mm-hmm. So it is something that the communication element may stay there. I mean, right now it's kind of up in the air in terms of what exactly is going to happen.
I think from a broker's place, we need to spend more time making sure that the consumers are aware of what we do and how we do it. I will say, I think we've moved past the whole brokers are bad perspective. And we know this is what I started the industry in, and I'll be the first to say this, and I know I'm so wrong for doing this, but when I was a sales manager, and one of my reps said, I'm going to go be a broker, my job was to tell them if they step off the curb, they'll get hit by a bus. Don't do it, right? That was my job, because how else do I retain a sales force other than scaring the life out of them to make sure they don't do it? Or it was easy to say, see what the broker just did? Look at this article, right? And you choose the one out of a million, right, to say, well, that's the whole industry. I think we're past that now, right? We're in that space now where it's recognized brokers do good jobs, right? What I still have difficulty with is, and it's came out in the news earlier, lawyers are still doing stuff. They'll quickly say brokers, or they'll quickly refer to the broker space. Nobody ever goes back and says the bank. Nobody will ever do that. No one will ever recognize that things are swept up under the rug of the bank. But in the broker space, we probably do less wrong than in the banking space. But they'll never parade that. They'll never say that out loud because they can't. Optics, I understand that.
Yeah, we see, like you said, when fraud happens and a broker's involved, it's front page news. We've seen a few of those over the last several years, and it is, I think, maybe a misconception that hopefully doesn't exist anymore. Like you mentioned, I know, just like you, when I was coming up, it was like, mortgage broker, aren't those the guys you go to if you have to, kind of thing. And I do think that's changed quite a bit. But Asif, I wanted to ask you, I mentioned it in the intro, I want to know about Play for Hope. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I'm curious to hear about that organization, maybe why you started it, and sort of, just more about it.
Play for Hope it started out many years ago when I first got into the brokerage space. So 2014, I wanted to give back. I came from, I grew up in Scarborough, raised in a single parent home. And there was a lot of things that I wish at that time as a teenager, I would have had some support, some mentoring, some, assistance at that time. So I started working with shelters and groups and different organizations to say, okay, listen, I'm going to raise some money, put together a youth program, whatever it may be. And over the years, it evolved. There was different things that we raised funds for. One of the things that I've always been, I would say, focused on is how do I bring financial literacy to the younger generation? A lot of it is they don't teach us in school. I mean, I joke about all sorts of stuff about how much Shakespeare has helped me over the years, and understanding what a parallelogram is. And listen, it didn't help me do my taxes, didn't help me with that credit application, it didn't help me with any of the stuff. How do we put together a financial literacy program to help the younger generations so they can be in a better position as they grow up to deal with everyday life? So Play for Hope became a thing I put together for many years, who raised some good money, had a lot of great participants, a lot of industry people, because it didn't matter what flag I was waving at the time. It was just industry people who believed in the same thing.
So is this a charity that you go and like deliver content to schools, or you provide content?
What we did initially, so this is how things have evolved over the years. What we did initially was just provide funding for those groups to put together programs, after school programs or whatever it may be. And then COVID came and everything stopped. So what happened during COVID, I settled down, had a bunch of kids, and now I'm starting back in life. And I'm planning for 2025 to start it again, but under a foundation. So we have Integrity Tree Financial. I'm building the foundation side of it. And that's going to be a segment where we put together some curriculum and some education to put out there to youth to deliver to local schools or whatever it may be. We'll start small, right? Not trying to, build Rome overnight. We want to go slow. Start with a couple of schools, see how it works, put together little programs that will be helpful to educate. And then we roll it out to others over time. Because of the fact that I'm also in the insurance side of the equation, I'm not limited to just the mortgage industry. I have a larger group of people. I'm also part of a board of trade in Ajax Pickering. So I'm getting out to a wider audience as opposed to just one group of people. And I've always had a good turnout. So, I'm going to bring it back and make that a major focal point.
So when you look at financial literacy, because that's a great point, what do you think is missing the most in regards to financial literacy for kids that are coming of age and going to get their first credit card and so on? What do you think is really missing there?
There's a few things. One in particular is the actual value. Social media has turned money into monopoly money. Come easy go. right? The value of money and what is important. And again, I do, and I hate using the word blame, but I do blame social media for, an 18-year-old thinking that having a Gucci belt is more important than having, you know, savings in their bank account. The materialistic world that has become here and now, I need it right now, let's go use credit to go get it, right? So that's one aspect. Understanding how money can work. So compound interest, understanding how to build credit and the importance of credit. Those are a couple of factors. If I went to a classroom with students and said, listen, if you put aside $20 a month for the next 10 years, this is how much you're going to have, they still don't understand what that means. I now equate that into this is life. This is what your bills cost. I think one of the basic things I would do with all young people is start a budget. And I don't like the word budget, but a cash flow analysis. Budget seems restrictive to me. Cash flow is here's your money in and money out. And I did this once with a grade 12 business class. They all found out they'd be living in the back of their Hyundai Accents with no cash or no gas. They got by on like dollar store food, and that was just the life was going to be like that. I'm like, you're not dating anybody. You have no internet. What are you going to do? Because they all said at the time, I'm going to make 30, 40,000. I'm like, what do you think $30 or $40,000 is going to do for you in this world?
Yeah, especially today.
You need to understand what money buys. So here's what your cell phone bill is going to be. Here's your gas. Here's your insurance. Here's your car payment. And we start building and realizing, wait, nobody took into account taxes, because from that $30,000 or $40,000, let's take off $7,000, $8,000 from that. That's taxes, right? And then what happens if you get sick, and so on and so forth. Just the understanding of what money does and having a positive cash flow versus a negative cash flow, that's a huge area lacking in the education system.
And I think it's also, just to add to that, I think it's also important, not just for those who are going to be making 30, 40 grand, 70, 80 grand, whatever it might be, but also for those that do find that great success financially, and maybe they're making a few $100,000, but then now it's the same principles, right? Because, well, what are they doing with that money? Where is it going? I mean, we've seen, like in my personal life, I've seen people blow that too, because it's a mindset. It's nothing to do with the amount you're getting necessarily, right? It's just the mindset of money.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm wrong for maybe just saying that number, because I know doctors who don't have nickels to rub together, right? And they make good coin. But mindset, and athletes, we've seen this throughout, years. Athletes come in, make big money, and they do the same thing they did before they had money, right? Well, the yacht and the 10 cars and the mansion, you don't need all that stuff, right? Put aside money for later. And that's, mindset is so huge, so important.
That's really important work that you're doing. And definitely want to, let's follow up with that, because we'd love to hear more about it, and maybe, we could do something together. But is there a website right now for that, or are you going to include that in 25 with we're
going to be building it. I'm segregating two aspects of the business. There's the company that, we have the different channels, which is integritytree.ca. And I'm repurposing something I used to do, which was more of what they don't teach you in school, with a focus on the financial stuff. So it'll be thinkasif.ca. That's me as an individual, where I will be speaking to different professionals about, all right, tell me about this. Tell me about that. Insurance or mortgage or investments, or why do I need a will? Have the professionals speak about it. But it's the stuff your everyday Joe needs to hear, right? Like, they don't know this stuff. They weren't teaching you this stuff. So that's why Think Asif originally started, but now it's expanding into, personal financial health and personal, physical health sort of stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. But just speaking of young people, this is something that, we do the mortgage agent course, and we're seeing now more and more young people coming in. I'm wondering if you're seeing the same thing in your business, and how that's changed, and what you think might be happening in the future with, we've seen, different generation of people also using more mortgage brokers now. So I'm wondering what you think about the industry in regards to generation and what might happen.
I think it's a good thing. I think the ones who are doing it and are being successful at it, there's a different mindset. They're a unique breed of, they have a hustle mentality, and they want to become wealthy, and they want to learn these skill set. And I think they'll come into the industry for a while and move on to bigger and greater things as time progresses because they're starting so young. A group of individuals that I think are going to retire off in the next decade, and you're going to see this influx of youth coming in. And depending on how immigration continues, we still need people to service. We still need people who are there for the next generation, this younger generation who are in there. Probably no different than I was. I was in my mid-late 20s when I got into the business, right? There's going to be a next group that's going to come in and start making waves, but they're going to be a lot more technically savvy, a lot more connected because of how the world is today, right? Back when I started, advertising in a phone book wasn't an odd conversation, right? Going out there and, showing up with a box of donuts and saying, "Hi, my name is," right? Like, it's a different world back then.
Do we still have phone books? I don't get them anymore to my door.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, but yeah.
Asif, what do you think the skills are now that somebody needs to be successful coming into the industry?
You need to be technically savvy because without social media in today's generation and the future generations, if you're not noticed and top of mind, if you're not connected, someone else will eat your food. Like, that's just how it's going to happen. And that's just the way the world has evolved, right? So you need to be technically savvy and connected. You need to have, and I think this is what's missing because it kind of shifted to the wrong direction for a little bit. Get out of transactional, go back to relationship. You have to be authentic and genuine and genuinely want to help people get to a better place because those stories will resonate and be spread. If you're transactional, people will still see right through that and they're not going to talk about you because you didn't leave a good impression. You were just transactional.
Or worse than that, they'll talk about you in a negative way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You still need people skills. You still need to be a good being at the end of the day, right? Those are important. Listen, I think, again, math skills are important. Numbers are important. But the world is getting to a point where we have resources. We have people around us to get it done, to make sure the numbers are correct. There's enough stop gaps and things to help you from failing from a number standpoint. You need to understand it, don't get me wrong. But if you're not a connected person and if you're not a good person, it doesn't matter how technically sound you are, right? When I used to teach the course, one thing I told every student was, I don't care how technically sound you are, and you could divide a mortgage 10 ways till Sunday. I don't care. If someone's not sitting on the other side of the table because you're not likable, you have zero value. Zero value. But, and I use these terms in class, and we're on a recording of this, but I guess you could be the biggest tool. But if everybody loves you and everybody likes you and they trust you, I'll hire an underwriter to sit next to you and crunch your numbers because they are fantastic at numbers and you're great at sales. And if people like you, they will follow you no matter where you go because you're a likable, trustable person, right? And they'll come in and do business with you and you have your underwriter with you to help crunch those numbers. You work as a team. If you can't get people on the other side of the table, it doesn't matter how smart you are, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important advice, becoming a trusted advisor and actually caring about people and their well-being and being likable. As you mentioned, it goes a long, long way. So the rest can be, and this is something that we talk about in the course as well, in the mortgage course is, for example, something like talking to a referral source. It's like, well, why would a referral source work with you? Why would a realtor work with you as a mortgage agent to send their clients to you? Why would they do that? And actually consider that. Why would they do that? Especially if you're maybe a lot younger, maybe you're new to financial services, new to sales. That's up to you to figure out what is it special, unique about you that makes them want to work with you. And often it's not, well, I'm the best at, as you mentioned, I'm the best at crunching numbers, right? It's usually like, no, I'm here for you. I'm the best at service. I'm the best at communication. I care about your clients as much as you do, right? That's what's going to resonate. That's the message I think that needs to be sold to those referral partners. And that actually needs to be the case and actually needs to happen. So
the know, like, trust factor is huge. At the end of the day, they got to know you, they got to like you, they got to trust you. Otherwise, nothing's happening anymore.
So Asif, just looking forward a little bit. I mean, we touched on it earlier, but I'm wondering if you can tell us, because again, we haven't talked about this, about Unicity International. Tell us about that. Became a franchise partner. How did that happen? What has that been like so far? And how long have you been with there?
So first of all, do you know anything about it? Or have you done any research on it at all?
Only a small amount. So maybe just for ourselves as well as our listeners, let us know maybe a quick background and then let us know sort of where you're at right now.
One of the things that became important to me as I got older, especially when I had kids, was my health. Big deal. Because obviously I want to be around for them. I'm a little older and I got little ones. I want to be able to still chase them and be around. I want to live longer. And with my dad passing away at a young age, it makes me think about things. One thing was weight loss. Other things were internally, my father had diabetes. And, it was something that was on my radar that was important for me to do. Now, several years ago, somebody reached out to me when I was going through a workout phase and all I was doing was working out. And they reached out and he said to me, "Hey, Asif, I've got this product. You should try it. It will help you out." And it was basically a system, drinking a tea and having fiber. At that time, and this was during COVID, I basically looked at him and I shot him down. I'm like, what type of cult or fad are you selling me? Right? Fast forward a few years, I paid attention to his social media. I paid attention to what he was doing, and very factual and scientific. He started mapping out, here's what happens if you fast for a period of time. Here's what happens if you have the right fiber, not the fiber they present you at the grocery store, but real fiber. Because the apples we eat that are this size, they used to be this. The carrots that are this big used to be this. Like all the food manufactured, the fiber content's been pulled out. So what happens to your body over time? So I said, all right, let me try this thing out. I got on it, started drinking my tea in the morning. Actually, you saw me drinking this tea. And then during my meal, have a fiber. And within about 2 or 3 weeks, I started noticing a difference. Alertness. I was a lot more energetic. I started shedding weight. Started shedding a lot of weight. And it wasn't a restrictive thing. I could go out, have my fiber, and go have 2 cheeseburgers if I felt like it. I'm a cheeseburger guy. I love cheeseburgers. Right? So it didn't stop me. But over time, I started just making healthier decisions. Like I'm not going out and partying and drinking what I used to drink. Right? I don't sit there and pound back tons of sugar and chocolates. My office used to have little canisters of chocolate everywhere, in every possible corner. So wherever I was, I could just reach and grab a chocolate. This place doesn't have any chocolate in it, right? And it's sustainable. It's been 1.5 years since I've been on it. What I realize is that, there's an opportunity to build a business out of it. Why? Because without getting into the entire presentation and taking up more time, over 80 or almost 90% of Ontarians have bad metabolic health. If I asked any of you right now, do you know somebody who has diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, just those 3 alone? There's a whole bunch of other stuff. How many people cross your mind right away? Right? Now, some of the people I work with have reversed high blood pressure pills. They off of diabetes medications, have shed 100, 120 pounds. I've seen people go through transformations that initially I was like, yeah, this can't be real. But then I know these people. I'm like, oh my God. So then I got on it. And then I decided, hey, I might as well work with this, because in having conversations on the insurance side, the amount of people that tell me, well, I might be hard to get approved. Why? Blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes. All right, well, listen, what if we tried this system out for a bit, and if it works for you, you can start to reverse some of your stuff, and now all of a sudden you go back and your blood work is better down the line. Here you go. Plus, part of my lifestyle, and I've been doing it. This suit that I'm wearing is not the suit I left the house with. I had to go back home and change because I rushed out to drop the kids and I put on a suit. Well, once I got out of the car to pick up one kid and take him to daycare, my pants started to slide off.
Just going to ask if you had to get a new wardrobe if you lost some weight.
Good problem. Yeah, so I have probably half of my wardrobe that much too big for me. I had a dress shirt on that I could pull out like huge. I was a much bigger guy. And I didn't realize how much weight I have lost until I started putting the clothes on that I used to wear. And then one of the things is, when my family and friends start telling me, what have you been up to? You've lost a lot of weight. Then I know, because they're the ones who see me, right? And they're like, well, how are you able to do it? Because I'm not changing my diet. Like, I'll adjust. But if I wanted to have half a pizza, I will, right? But I've been able to sustain it. So I turned it into, the business side of the equation. I've got people with me under my umbrella who they have a network of people who all have medical ailments, and they're working one person at a time to help them change their lifestyle, get better healthy, right? Because financial health is important. But if you don't have personal health, then you can't enjoy your financial health anyway, right? It all ties in together.
Yeah, that's it's so well spoken and so true. Asif, for anyone listening that wants to find out maybe some more information about that, is there like a site that they can go to that you have up, or anywhere else they can find out more information?
Yeah, they could probably reach out to thinkasif.ca on that website. I'm actually getting the website redone right now to incorporate this stuff, but thinkasif.ca is where we're going to be doing all of this personal health and financial health conversations. Well, I'll be talking about, your getting a home. I'll be talking about protecting your family. I'll be talking about protecting your personal health. All the things that in school, they don't teach us.
Perfect. Love that. Asif, any final thoughts or anything else you want to leave our listeners with before we wrap up here?
You know what? I would say what's important, and I wish I could tell everybody this, is invest time into yourself first. Learn as much as you can every day that goes by about not only yourself, but your personal health, about who you are. Invest time and money into yourself, because once you realize who you are and what you represent and what you need, pour into yourself first before you can pour it into the others. And from a business standpoint, I've noticed a lot of people spend, and I was one of them as well. I pour all of my energy into my people, but I emptied myself out. And you can't do that. It's not sustainable. You got to keep yourself filled to a certain level before you could fill other people up. And you got to learn about yourself and know who you are, what makes you tick, and what's best for you first. So invest the time in learning about yourself, because that is going to get you much further. Otherwise, you're going to burn out on both ends.
Well said, and excellent advice. So, Asif, thank you very much for your time. I know you're an incredibly busy individual, and you know what? We really respect you and appreciate the time that you've given us today. We wish you continued success. We'll definitely be back in touch with some of the initiatives that you've got going on. That sounds very exciting for the near future. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thanks, Asif.
Our pleasure. Thanks. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the $1 Billion Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode.
For more in-depth entrepreneurial insights, follow us on social media, and for more info on the show, go to billiondollarpodcast.com.
See you next time.